Yeah, it's been a short minute, but Bitcoin is already on its way back up. It's had this back test down to first 103K and then down to just that 100K flat level. We went just slightly higher than it, which is in line with the ideas that we've been talking about on the channel, where Bitcoin's going to be front running a lot of its support levels. So obviously it front ran this one by a little bit as well. It's not drawn perfectly, but it did still front run it a little bit. And since then, Bitcoin has just continued on attacking those all-time highs. We're now back at the all-time high that we originally set in on the 17th of December last year. And we're not far away from our actual all-time high. It's only 3% away. Now, this is obviously happening, I think, because of the strength with the S&P 500. The S&P 500's been looking pretty good for a pretty long time now. And one of the key things we were talking about on this channel is that, this period of consolidation here is going to be exactly that, which is consolidation. So that's what we've seen here on this chart. And I think it's very, very telling of where we could be going moving forward. Okay, if we just kind of look at the charts and just look at the stories they're telling us rather than any of the other BS. By the way, I really did a lot of thinking about this, and I genuinely feel like most people who want to strongly improve their trading, they need to stop talking to everybody and get off all social media and stop watching the news, right? Like, I feel that the best trader for crypto would probably be the person who only looks at charts and goes out in the real world and, walks their dog and, does all the normal stuff in life, but no more media consumption, no more friends talking to you about markets, nothing like that. Give it a think. Yeah, you'll probably be scared of doing it, and you probably won't do it, but give it a think, because there's someone who will. There's going to be a few who will after watching this video. I guarantee you they're going to be on a better path than someone who kind of keeps these things in their life. And if you think about it, you'll start to understand why. But let's move on. If we really just look at what the charts are telling us, we had this nice period of kind of consolidation right here for the S&P 500 right at the top, and then a pretty steep drop down when the tariff question started to come in. But we've made a pretty much complete recovery, and we've had one, I don't want to say major pullback, but we've had one pullback in this rally so far, and then we had this little bit of consolidation. So that's two continuation events, which I think is fantastic. That's pretty much what you want to see. And if we zoom in a little bit more to understand how this happened, we first fell down to this low on the 7th of April, and we managed to make a 13% rally. From this low up to this high where we started the next consolidation, it was a 17% rally. So we're looking at, moderate rallies and safe, decent, harmless corrections as well, right? Ultimately, all that happened here was we traded sideways more or less for about 3 weeks. That's it. It wasn't actually that painful, and we're now kind of rallying back up. So look, this can stop, this can reverse. I don't know why, but obviously there's a million reasons in any given direction for what could happen in the market. But as far as, basic trends of moving up and then having a pullback and then moving up and having a, consolidation event, we're just lining up with this thing continuing to move up. And if we do see something like a, 15% rally, let's say, just kind of in the middle of the two that we just studied, that does still put us pretty, we're getting close to 7K on the S&P 500 here. So look, with all of that in line, in light, I should say, clearly Bitcoin is in a pretty good place. It's moving with the S&P 500. There are small decoupling events, and we've covered them on this YouTube channel. If you're subscribed to the channel, you're going to be quite familiar with all of those ideas. And those decoupling events come up every now and then, but, we've been quite consistent on this channel that actually, these are just anomalies, and we're not going to give too much statistical significance to anomalies because they're anomalies. So pretty straightforward work there. And with all of that in mind, I really, really feel like, this thing's just ready for an all-time high as well, right? I don't think that the S&P 500 is going to be seeing another pullback. Who knows? I could be wrong. It could see a big consolidation event now, or just crash and, Kamala Harris was right. You know what I mean? And maybe that's what happened, right? But I don't know. What I will say is, if you weren't on Twitter or on any of your mainstream news channels for the last kind of 96 hours, you wouldn't have even known that Donald Trump and Elon Musk had a fight. That happened, if I'm not mistaken, on Friday. And it's now Monday, it's a new week, but pretty much from Saturday and definitely from Sunday onwards, nobody was talking about it anymore. So and it felt like, I was kind of going crazy as I saw that shit happen. Because I don't know, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And I was really thinking that this could turn into something very, very big. And then even I was humbled about that and wrong, right? And this is ultimately what we all do when we're kind of in the throes of the news, when we consume this shit, on the regular, and when we're kind of, watching it develop in real time. You kind of get attached to the story. I certainly made that mistake because clearly it was completely inconsequential. And I was aware of it from the market standpoint, right? That's why I had a lot of people telling me, you got to make a live stream today. You got to talk about this, give your thoughts. And I was like, first of all, who the hell am I? And second of all, the markets don't care, right? I mean, I can't even tell you what day it happened based on the chart, right? The chart doesn't tell us that story. It was probably, to be fair, it was probably like around here, but it's not reasonable to be able to kind of tell where this happened on the chart because the chart didn't really do anything. And the S&P 500 I think proves that very well, right? If we take a look at this on a daily perspective, we know that it was Friday, right? I mean, Friday was again just a completely inconsequential day for the markets here, so really not anything that ended up affecting us very much, which I think is important because that was one of the bigger pieces of news that we got in 2025 so far, at least on the day that it dropped, and it didn't do anything for the market, right? And I think that that's really, really good reason to tell us that, hey, if you're looking to kind of be informed for that black swan, you're probably actually suffering more looking for that black swan than just being a little bit humble about it and saying that you might miss it, right? Ultimately, we take this approach with life, right? You're gonna drive, you're gonna wear your seatbelt, you're gonna drive safely, but something can happen, right? And you're not gonna stop driving because of that. So I think it's the same thing with markets, but we don't really perceive it that way because it's not such intense physical danger. It's just quiet losing money, right? So it's a little bit different in that way, but I think that we should still just maintain a kind of realistic perspective about it. If you kind of do most of your bits, you'll be in a good place. But let's bring it back to Bitcoin here. Let's get a little bit more specific about prices here. If you are enjoying this video so far, do us a favor and smash up those likes, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and check out Levex for exclusive chart setup updates from the team. We're still posting tons in there. Actually, now that the market is heating up, this is getting a lot more relevant because if Bitcoin is indeed going to be breaking its all-time high soon, which we will be talking about in just a moment, then the info that you guys are getting from Levex, from us on Levex, for free is going to be a pretty big deal. So all you've got to do to get access to that is sign up. And if you do want to start trading on Levex, you're getting, everything that you're used to. You're getting some pretty cool benefits, by the way, some, cool deposit matches and just free trades you can take. But also, the things that you're used to, like proof of reserves and stuff like that, great liquidity. So definitely check it all out if you are interested. And if, of course, you're not from a restricted region, always make sure that you are compliant with your jurisdiction. But taking a look at the market here, look, we've got a breakout now after we've been consolidating for a little bit. It's been a bit of a weird one because you would expect the pullback to be a little bit deeper, especially after losing a low like this. But like I said, there were no easy ways to identify support on this chart. And by the way, we might top and then, move back down as well. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But, I don't really think that there was a kind of easy way to draw support on this chart at this stage. There's just so much going on and there's just such good support levels everywhere. I've already pointed out that if you fail at, over here, 103, then you've got support at 100. But if you fail that, you've got 97, and then you've got a really big block here between 95 and 97, and then you've got 93, and then you've got the low 90s, so 91. It's just a bit silly. It is literally every $2,000 down, and coincidentally only on odd numbers, I don't know, that Bitcoin support really kind of peaks. But that stuff is, this doesn't have to be a pain point. I think that for a lot of people, we're trying to trade this market a little bit too aggressively, and that's where that pain comes in. But if you're just looking at this in terms of where's the support, you know, well, now you know that there's an abundance of support. And I mean, that doesn't mean that the market's going to hold. If something crashes, it can crash, right? Like, you know, I don't hold a crystal ball. I don't see the future. But on balance, overall, weighing probabilities, I would expect that, you know, that immense amount of support is going to do something good for Bitcoin, even if shit starts to turn a little bit sour, okay? And if that's what's happening, then hey, that's good enough for me, man. You know, like I'm living my life out here. I'm not trying to, you know, wrap my entire life around these markets, believe it or not. I do believe that's the way to be successful in these markets, but I don't know, only 8 years of experience, like I said, what do I know? But yeah, I think that, you know, that really tells us a lot in and of itself. If we watch this move up a little bit higher now, I mean, you know, is this just going to be another kind of big sideways event? You know, that's definitely possible. That would actually be, you're going to hate me for this, but that would actually be quite healthy. So I don't know, that would be pretty cool, you know, if we did do something like that. I mean, the breakout would be face melting, and it probably wouldn't get reversed anytime soon. That would actually be, you know, like, that's the kind of thing that you want to put a note under your pillow and pray for. But, you know, I don't know, it's hard to say, and it really, I think, especially depends on the S&P 500. If we start to see, from a political standpoint, perhaps, that things get a little bit more optimistic, even more optimistic than they have become now since, you know, the initial kind of drama of the tariffs, then, you know, we could actually be looking at a breakout for the SPX. But I don't know, and I'm not going to start kind of speculating on that, because that's a lot of different, you know, outside variables that I don't really want to talk about in this video. And so, you know, I think it really depends. But, you know, if we do end up seeing a big explosion, then I'd expect that for Bitcoin. And, you know, we've been consolidating for enough time now. You know, this rally has also been kind of 15% from the low to the next high. So, you know, measuring that out puts us at about 116,000, which is quite in line with the really painful, slightly higher all-time highs that we're getting. You know, but obviously, you know, I think after, you know, coiling up for this long, we could actually be looking at a much more substantial kind of all-time high presence. And I still think that, you know, of course, that would be the same thing that we'd be seeing on the S&P 500 as well, which is pretty cool. Now, as far as dominance goes, we're basically setting a new high here. We're so close to the previous high that we punched in. We're only about 0.6% away at this stage. And if we are able to, you know, kind of set that new high right here, then that's probably going to involve coins like Ethereum taking a hit, which has actually been looking really, really quite good, you know, since it kind of got up to this level in early May. Really just a fantastic place for Ethereum BTC to have kind of stabilized, and it's actually the most stable performance that I think we've seen. Actually, there's something up here that looked very, very similar, and this ended up failing. But so far, look, we're doing the right thing. I mean, it failed before. I don't want to paint it with the same brush. I do still think that Bitcoin's dominance has more to go, so we're probably leaning down, but you know, I do feel like, especially for people that are interested in Ethereum long term, that have been parked up, you know, this level has made a lot of sense. It made sense, you know, for us, and we made some posts about it. So, you know, it is what it is. Like I said, if you want to get the exclusive chart setups that we're using kind of for actual trades that we're looking at and stuff like that, that's actually being posted right here on Levex. So definitely do check that out if you are interested. Like I said, completely free, you know, and you can get those insights straight onto your phone as well. So again, only if you're not from a restricted region. But bringing it back to the video here, you know, I think that's a great example. I think Bitcoin dominance itself, you know, it's kind of just a matter of time. Could it see another pullback and reverse completely? Yes, but I'm not in the business of these low probability setups. You know, a lot of people, they want to stick to these fringe ideas, and like, you do you, bro, but you're clearly showing me where your bias is. You're clearly showing me that you don't have any level of objectivity. You're probably overly invested, and now you think that an emotional argument is going to make your investment work for you. Not how it works, mate. It's not how it works, mate. Don't even go there. Don't do that to yourself. You don't need to do that to yourself. You know, and if we take a look at some alts across the space with that in mind, I do think that Trump is pretty interesting. It fell down to this support level that I was watching for quite some time, overshot it by a little bit, and now actually looking pretty good. It is in a, you know, pretty sizable downtrend with a lot of resistance that could be catching up to it right now. So again, you know, I think this is going to be something to kind of watch out for. Solana has fallen below some of its significant levels. Obviously, the kind of 170 level was pretty interesting for Solana, and it was just kind of moving around for this last year and a bit now. But if we really zoom in and take a look at what it's been doing recently, you know, it's just kind of I think finding support at some of its historic levels. So Not a whole lot we can say over here. It's kind of just doing what the rest of the market is doing. Here's XRP with another small bounce right here. Like I said, kind of moves on its own schedule and continuing to do that here. This time it's moving in line with Bitcoin. Sometimes it behaves like a major. Sometimes it behaves like a shitcoin. Sometimes it behaves like XRP, which is a major and a shitcoin. So, so it just is what it is. Here's Doge, obviously still at a pretty painful level, I think. Really did drop quite hard, but also still in good posture. I mean, it didn't fall down some of its more critical levels, so it's at least got that going for it. Here's 𝗙𝗢𝗟, just kind of making another rally up. So like I said, there's mixed performance across the board. 𝗙𝗢𝗟, kind of having the significant KOL influencer presence that it has, is actually behaving a little bit more like a major, or like even Binance Coin would at certain times like this. Binance Coin's not doing it today, but a lot of the time, when Bitcoin is up and nothing else is up, you will see coins like Binance Coin or XRP, some of those kind of so-called usual suspects, kind of floating around. But pretty decent performance overall across the board. For the most part, these coins are living in Bitcoin's shadow, and Bitcoin's looking pretty ready to get higher. Now, if it doesn't end up getting higher from here, and, let's say it tops out here, or just, at the previous all-time high, then obviously, you're looking at targeting the lows again, and that really, like I said, it opens us up for this kind of sideways trading range idea. I would want to pay attention to it. But of course, it would also be really bad, especially for the bulls. You can't rule out the possibility that it will sweep the low. And if it does sweep the low, we're back into the same thing of like, well, which support level is going to work? I don't know. Obviously, the best one is going to be in this box for the entire kind of $90,000 to $100,000 price range. The best support level is going to be right in the middle of this 95 to 97K range. That's also the point of control. So that level definitely makes the most sense on this chart, in my opinion. But if you're sweeping a low, if you've already kind of, had a bit of a reaction rally, it is entirely possible that you drop a little bit lower. Our 618 retracement falls somewhere like over here. So I don't know. And honestly, I don't really care. I can't bring myself to care. I can't act like I care. We're going to be fine no matter what happens. The market's pretty healthy, ladies and gents. The market's pretty healthy. The market's moving in pretty healthy ways. We had the world's richest and the world's most powerful man fighting each other, American versus African, and the markets just literally just did not care. They just did not care. Nothing ended up happening from it, and instead we're setting highs. I mean, look, you can be as pessimistic as you want, but ultimately, for me, a bull market is going to have certain pretty obvious signs while things are developing. One of those obvious signs is going to be that something fucking disastrous happens, and the market shrugs it off, and then it continues rallying up. That's quite synonymous with a bull market. If you go back and study this stuff, that's kind of what you'll see across the board. The way people talk about it, especially the wise ones, when they talk with hindsight, they'll say stuff like what I just said there, which is that, a bull market will pretty much just shrug off negative events. It won't care, and then it will get back to business on Monday, which is more or less exactly what we're doing. I'll be watching this to see if things kind of develop and change. It's entirely possible that this is not how it continues, but we've been pretty consistent with our perspective for like over a year or two now, pretty much since the bottom in 2023. So we've been pretty consistent with this perspective now for well over a year, and or well over 2 years even. We've been pretty correct about it, pretty much entirely 100% correct about it every step of the way. And I think, it's not because we're geniuses, we're good. It's not because we're geniuses. It's because we're just keeping it simple, okay? The market, I can't stress this enough. I think this is one of the main things I've been saying on this channel now for, quite a bit of time. This was really quite a simple bull market. Yeah, it was quite a simple bull market. We went up, and then we go sideways, and then we go up, and then we go sideways. We go up, and we go kind of down. We go up, we go kind of down, and we're kind of just, like it's just not a complex bull market. As far as structure goes, we've seen definitely more complex bull markets before, but to be honest, Bitcoin's bull markets are overall quite straightforward. They just go up and they have pullbacks, and none of it happens when you expect it to. That's kind of it. There's not much more to it. And, I think the people that are suffering here, these are the people that are locked to smaller time frames because they're looking for, trades right now, like fucking gamblers. We don't want to be like gamblers, okay? Very, very easy to fall into that trap, and we're not in that business. That's not what we do here on this YouTube channel. We want to do essentially the polar opposite of gambling. That's what we want to do. So, that's kind of what we're all about. And if you like that, then definitely make sure you are subscribed. Like I said, pretty simple structure for this bull market. It's not that complex. We're not doing anything that crazy. We're having fake outs along the way, but like I said, if you're not locked into those small time frames, then these wouldn't be hurting you. So I think we've still got a lot of time left in this bull market. If your strategy is not working for you, then you've got time to change it. I've been in a position before where I was stubborn, and then the bull market ended, and I could have made a lot more money. It's probably happened to you as well. We don't want to repeat that. We can be wiser than that at this point. We've had phenomenal success with members who took up our exclusive package right here. It is a 12-week program and incredibly hands-on. Super value packed. This is the most value packed offer that we've actually ever put out. And if you're interested in getting information on it, then you can reach out directly using this link right here. It is expensive and it is very serious. I don't want people reaching out who, I don't know, are just kind of like partially interested in passing or whatever. No, like if you genuinely want to do something massive, then reach out. Otherwise, we don't have capacity. Not for this program, that is. Other stuff, if you're a little bit less serious, you can, there's going to be more. There's going to be some really, really cool stuff we're bringing out, but this one in particular, this is for the absolute most serious people who want to, turn things around or accelerate, with no guarantees. We haven't had any failures yet. We haven't had anybody fail or do badly at all, in this program yet. But obviously someone's going to come and ruin it. So we're being picky with who we choose. But reach out if you are interested, on this link right here, and we can get you in. But ladies and gents, really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, you know what to do. Hit up those likes, subscribe, tick the bell, do all that good stuff. And we will see you all in the next one. Cheers. Wow, can't end the video. That was weird.